The Assembly of Uri, by Anonymous. Let me ask you to follow me in spirit to the very home and birthplace of freedom, to the land where we need not myth or fable to add aught to the fresh and gladdening feeling with which we for the first time tread the soil and drink the air of the immemorial democracy of Uri. It is one of the opening days of May. It is the morning of Sunday, for men then deem that the better the day, the better the deed. They deem that the Creator cannot be more truly honored than in using, in His fear and in His presence, the highest of the gifts which He has bestowed on man. But deem not that, because the day of Christian worship is chosen for the great yearly assembly of a Christian commonwealth, the more direct sacred duties of the day are forgotten. Before we, in our luxurious island, have lifted ourselves from our beds, the men of the mountains, Catholic and Protestant alike, have already paid the morning's worship in God's temple. They have heard the Mass of the priest, or they have listened to the sermon of the pastor, before some of us have awakened to the fact that the morn of the holy day has come. And when I saw men thronging the crowded church, or kneeling, for want of space within, on the bare ground beside the open door, and when I saw them marching thence to do the highest duties of men and citizens, I could hardly forbear thinking of the saying of Holy Writ, that, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. From the marketplace of Altdorf, the little capital of the canton, the procession makes its way to the place of meeting at Boslingen. First marches the little army of the canton, an army whose weapons can never be used save to drive back an invader from their land. Over their heads floats the banner, the bull's head of Uri, the ensign which led men to victory on the fields of Sempach and Morgart. And before them all, on the shoulders of men clad in a garb of ages past, are borne the famous horns, the spoils of the wild bull of ancient days, the very horns whose blast struck such dread into the fearless heart of Charles of Burgundy. Then, with their lictors before them, come the magistrates of the Commonwealth on horseback, the chief magistrate, the landemon, with his sword by his side. The people follow the chiefs whom they have chosen to the place of meeting, a circle in a green meadow with a pine forest rising above their heads, and a mighty spur of the mountain range, facing them on the other side of the valley. The multitude of the freemen take their seats around the chief ruler of the Commonwealth, whose term of office comes that day to an end. The assembly opens. A short space is first given to prayer, silent prayer offered up by each man in the temple of God's own rearing. Then comes the business of the day. If changes in the law are demanded, they are then laid before the vote of the assembly, in which each citizen of full age has an equal vote and an equal right of speech. The yearly magistrates have now discharged all their duties. Their term of office is at an end. The trust which has been placed in their hands falls back into the hands of those by whom it was given, into the hands of the sovereign people. The chief of the Commonwealth, now such no longer, leaves his seat of office, and takes his place as a simple citizen in the ranks of his fellows. It rests with the free will of the assembly to call him back to his chair of office, or to set another there in his stead. Men who have neither looked into the history of the past, nor yet troubled themselves to learn what happens year by year in their own age, are fond of declaiming against the caprice and ingratitude of the people, and of telling us that under a democratic government, neither men nor measures can remain for an hour unchanged. The witness alike of the present and of the past is an answer to baseless theories like these. The spirit which made democratic Athens year by year bestow her highest offices on the patrician Pericles and the reactionary Phocion still lives in the democracies of Switzerland. The ministers of kings, whether despotic or constitutional, may vainly envy the sure tenure of office, which falls to the lot of those who are chosen to rule by the voice of the people. Alike in the whole confederation, and in the single canton, re-election is the rule. The rejection of the outgoing magistrate is the rare exception. The landemon of Uri, whom his countrymen have raised to the seat of honor, and who has done nothing to lose their confidence, need not fear that when he has gone to the place of meeting in the pomp of office, his place in the march homeward will be transferred to another against his will. Notes: Uri, a Swiss canton which, early in the 14th century, united with Unterwalden and Schwyz to form the Swiss Confederation. Sempach 1386, and Morgarten 1315, both great victories won by the Swiss over the Austrians. Charles the Bold of Burgundy was defeated by the Swiss in 1476 at Morat. Pericles, a great orator and statesman, who, in the middle of the 5th century B100, guided the policy of Athens and made her the center of literature, philosophy, and art. Phocion, an Athenian statesman of the 4th century B100, who opposed Demosthenes in his efforts to resist Philip of Macedon. His reactionary policy was atoned for by the uprightness of his character.